And before we get going, here's a word about our sponsors. SDHQ Motorsports is a powerhouse 30,000 square foot facility with 45 family members reporting for duty. This single owner, single location business is based out of Gilbert, Arizona. It can handle anything from a hot rod, daily driver, pre-runner, race vehicle, half-track or Kugelwagen, or just about any other project you need help with. Their skilled staff with hundreds of years of combined experience eats, sleeps, and breathes performance. So go check them out at sdhqmotorsports.com or check them out on Insta at sdhqmotorsports. The We Happy Few 506 podcast is brought to you in partnership with the Gettysburg Museum of History, home of the Major Dick Winters collection and the largest assortment of authentic Band of Brothers artifacts in the world. Visit the free museum at 219 Baltimore Street in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, or at www.gettysburgmuseumofhistory.com, and on the YouTube channel, The History Underground, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Well, hello and welcome along to another We Happy Few 506 podcast, Up a Mountain, podcasting on the edge. I just came up with that. I'm here with my beautiful co-host, Dougie. How you doing, Dougie?
I'm very well, thank you, Matthew. How are you? You look very sun-kissed and healthy up there in the mountains. How high up are you?
I'm not too high, but I am quite high altitude-wise because ayahuasca grows freely here. It's not too bad. The top of the mountain's up that way, but there are bears, and I'm slightly terrified of bears. I'm outside a place called Barnardsville, which is near Asheville in North Carolina. And you missed it last week, Dougie, but there is a man who lives up there in the woods, an Airstream, who goes by the name of Wolf. I assumed he'd look like Swamp Thing. Literally, if this was in a movie, you wouldn't believe it. If they were like two girls camping and there's a guy in an Airstream, I went up there and this beautiful dog comes running out. It's called Coda, like a husky dog. And then I heard this voice go, "Hey man, hang on, I'm naked." And he comes out. I'm not joking with you this. He comes out of the Airstream pulling on the coolest pair of jeans you've ever seen, and it's an Adonis. It's the most ridiculous looking man you have ever seen. He's got like hair all up and everything. He's shredded to shreddedness. Totally tanned. He's like, "Hey man, I'm Wolf." And yeah, nice to meet you, Wolf. I'm a gay guy now. So that's where I am. Anyway, I'm rambling about Wolf again. Anything to talk about Wolf. But I'd like to welcome to the pod Jonas Moore. How are you, Jonas?
Really good, thank you. Fewer bears and nude men where I'm based. Very happy to hear that fewer, crucially.
Right. If you go out to San Francisco, there are more bears and more nude men as well. Yes. So you can kind of you can balance it out that way. But where are you?
Holiday sorted. I'm in London. I'm in Wandsworth, which is just simply not as exciting as where you are. I wish I had a better anecdote.
You may be the only Masters of the Air cast member who lives in London.
Potentially. Yeah. Because Louis moved out. Darryl's still here. He's of a pub. I see him a lot at the pub. We have good nights.
I think because when we started out, Matt, it was all in-person auditions, and now with the self-tape and the Zoom and everything, it allows people to not pay extortionate rents. You know what I mean? I think that's the main reason for the exodus out of the southeast.
Yeah. I mean, I highly advise moving up a mountain and getting a Starlight.
Yeah,
Elon Musk-ish, because I could audition from here.
Do mountain boot camp.
Yeah, I think that's one of the ideas you had, wasn't it, Matt? Look, he's frozen again. He's frozen in a very handsome face, though, isn't he? To be fair, Jonas.
Looking good, to be fair to him.
Yeah, you do look well, Matthew. You look,
I'm envious of your outdoor glow.
Yeah. Are you doing sort of outdoor workouts like with Wolf now? Are you,
Was Wolf from Gladiator a woman or a man?
It was a bloke, wasn't it?
Is it Wolf from Gladiator?
Yeah. That's where I first heard the nickname Wolf. Yeah.
I don't know. Sorry.
But anyway, right. So Matt seems to have frozen. Are you back with us, Matt?
I'm going to move. I'm going to move somewhere where I know it'll be better. Hang on.
Yeah. Ask Wolf. He's probably got a router.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, one of the first questions we always ask Jonas is, what was your auditioning process like? What was the experience like for you on Masters? Because we have, differing things. Some people brought on quite early, some things were quite late. How did you come about your first auditions, and what was the process like?
I got sent through the first tape by my agent, and it was for Crosby.
Right.
And I had a feeling that, like, I looked at the tape, I saw the project, I thought, wow, this is huge, and this is a big part. And I had this sort of sense that perhaps they were auditioning, they were sending out loads of auditions for one big part to sort of fish through to see who they wanted. Because I think at that point they had already cast Anto.
Right.
So I sort of sent this off, thought nothing of it. It's another audition tape for a massive project. It's not going to come through. That's ridiculous. Imagine such a thing.
Yeah.
and then in February, so 3 months later, so this is February 21, I get another tape through for Murphy. And I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool. This is still a decent part, lots of episodes. At that point, he was down for 8 eps, I think.
Yeah.
And in the audition notes, it said that Murphy played the clarinet. So I sent a message to my agent. I was like, let's tape for this. Great. But just to let you know, I do actually play the clarinet. I learned it at school. So she was like, oh, brilliant. So I sent off this tape. And then I'm with my mum in the car because it's lockdown and I'm living at home. And I get a call from her being like, how soon can you send a clarinet tape? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? She's like, can you do it by the end of today? And I was like, I haven't played clarinet for 7 years, but why not? So then I go home.
A squeaky version of Three Blind Mice by any chance?
Yeah, exactly. Genuinely, I sent my grade 8 clarinet piece that I tried to pull out of my arse. Can I swear on this? Sorry.
Of course you can.
And then genuinely something like 45 takes later, I got a clean 30 seconds that I was able to send through. And then didn't hear anything back for like a month. I was working at my old school doing like admin stuff, and got a call on a Friday, and both my agents on a group call. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
They were like, my American one was like, should we tell him? What should I tell him? Or do you want to tell him? And she was like, no, you tell him. And then everything changed from there, really.
So grade 8, that's very high. So the clarinet piece must have been very good.
Well, there's basically like proper grade 8 and there's chances grade 8.
Okay.
Associate board and Trinity board. I did, as you can probably imagine, chances grade 8.
Yeah.
I'm a chancer of a clarinet player. My sight reading is absolutely dire. But got through, and hopefully I think in some ways it might have swung some things in my favor. So very, very grateful for my parents for pushing me to play the clarinet when I was 7 years old.
God, it's so strange how things kind of work out in the end. Like, you know what I mean?
Honestly.
The little skills and things you learn when you look young that you think will have no consequence, and then it could have swung it. Because I mean, at the end of the day, they asked you for a clarinet tape, so they wanted to see it. So, it's obviously helped. Yeah, but it's a big gap, like 3 months without hearing anything before sending your first tape off. But I think you're right, because I think they did that with us, because we all kind of read. A lot of people read for the Doc Rowe part when the same sort of thing. Everyone read for kind of one part just to see if they can be put in the ballpark. And then it was about a month or two later, wasn't it, Matthew, that we all got sort of went up for more individual roles?
Yeah, I was way later being cast. So I actually read for Lieutenant Jones, which Colin Hanks got. Not quite sure how he got that.
Yeah.
But I get your point. Your point.
But you guys had you were all in person, of course, right?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, we had to go to the Athenaeum Hotel. I had a few auditions there, which is where Tom Hanks was staying, which is like a hotel of apartments. And that's where who was the casting director called again? Meg Lieberman. Meg Lieberman, yeah. So I went there probably 3 times. Had 2 with Meg and then 1 with Tom at the end. Yeah.
What was that like?
Oh, I remember sitting on the park bench opposite, is it Green Park that's directly opposite? There's like a little park opposite the Athenaeum Hotel in Piccadilly. I remember sitting on the park bench and I'd been acting about 18 months, and then my whole family were against it, and all my friends were like against it, like, you know, because you're untrained, I didn't really do school or anything like that.
Be a carpenter, Doug.
You're a chippy. Know your roots. What my dad said. You're a worker. You're not an artist. So you can't even spell Shakespeare, let alone read it. And he was right, of course. But I remember sitting there on that bench and went to myself, well, if there's any guy that can tell me if I've got talent, it's Tom Hanks, and I'm just going to meet him. And if he gives me this job, I'm going to continue it. And if he doesn't, I'll just walk away, because like it seems like, you know, it seems like everyone could be right or whatever. And of course, I went in there and I got it, which was, you know, fantastic. It's a great feeling, isn't it? Yeah. How many weeks before you got it, before you started your boot camp?
Oh, so okay. It must have been maybe three or 4 weeks. It was meant to be earlier, but then there was a delay. They moved the boot camp 1 week later.
Yeah.
Which to me was incredibly good news, because lockdown was, I'm not going to lie, I wasn't particularly in shape. And the first thing I did was go on YouTube and watch your lads' boot camp. Spent the next sort of 5 or 6 nights not sleeping, sort of thinking about who was it. He was sewing his own wound back together.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus Christ.
That was probably Compton, Neil McDonough. He didn't so much sew his wound back together as lose half his face to a 50 cal. And then Taylor, who played Doc Rowe, had to kind of sew him back together.
Yeah.
And then
going, you know, I'm not a real doctor.
He was like, I was a doctor, I'm an actor.
He made a big meal out of it. It was only a couple of stitches, but
yeah. Made a meal out of it. What a
NHS made the new dentures anyway. It's fine. He made a big deal out of it. You know, these LA actors, they're just such a fuss.
Yeah. But your boot camp was quite technical, wasn't it? It was quite individual, smaller groups, and yeah. Tell us
very
about
technical. That. So you know, I think we came into it. Actually, the first time I spoke to Anto, he looked at a group of us, sort of fresh out of drama school lads, kind of like quaking in our boots, and he sort of said, "Oh, guys, we're going to have the very rude word kicked out of us today." And we were like, "Well, bring it on! Here we go. We might as well throw ourselves into the deep end." And we sat down in this big old room, and we had a day of lectures, really. Because I think what's the difference between a boot camp where you're trying to train a load of infantry and paratroopers is that it's much less about sort of fight and flight, like physical responses. What those guys really needed was like an incredible technical knowledge of their aircraft and of the flight sort of the flight formations, and just generally sort of like which enemy you're up against, which fighters are which. And for us navigators, it was like, well, you need to know where you're going. You need to know what all of your tools do. You need to know how to use dead reckoning and pilotage. So automatically, I think they focused it less on the sort of like more physical stuff and much more on the general knowledge of the show. Because I think in some ways people have slightly less of a general knowledge of the US Air Force in World War II, especially of the 8th Air Force, you know, of the sort of B-52 raid. Oh my God.
Yeah, B-17.
You didn't hear that. You didn't hear that.
Did you pay attention at boot camp, Jonas?
Jeez, that's terrible. The B-17s. I spent 2 years talking about B-17s. And yet here on the podcast,
that's all right. We'll cut it out. We won't, but we'll cut it out. Because the navigators, like the most challenging job. Like a friend of my dad's was a navigator on a Lancaster bomber in World War II, and he loved it because he says it kept him super busy. You were always calculating all the time, and it kind of kept his mind away from the horror of everything else that could happen or could go wrong or could get shot down or anything like that. Did you find? I mean, did you get really into learning what a navigator does, and did you practice and all this kind of stuff and really go with it?
It's what you said about your friend's dad is exactly what Frank Murphy, the character I played, spoke about in his book. He was thankful for the graphs and for the work he had to do. The guys he really sort of like felt for were the waist gunners who just had to sit there and wait until the barrage happened. Did I get into it? You know what? I tried, but it it was simply too vast a challenge to learn sort of we got
it takes years, right?
Years, but they sort of crammed it into, I think it was a 12-week training program,
right?
You know, like 10 hours a day in school, in lessons, literally. So I tried. I got familiar with like the jargon and the words and the terminology and general sort of ideas about like how wind speed affects you and how you can use your sextant to tell where you are. And you're literally sort of like, I tried to learn some constellations, but the actual sort of literal navigation beyond stuff that I could sort of do to busy myself if the camera was on me, it was just a bit too much to learn. Yeah. So what I did really was just, you know, smash through Frank's book a few times and really just, you know, learn through that really.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? So we had Sawyer Spielberg on a couple of days ago, and we got, what a dude.
What a dude.
What a great guy, man.
Love that guy.
So cool. Like, he was a little, not standoffish, but he was obviously a little, I don't know, protective of himself or nerd. Like, so even the entire interview, he did like this, kind of looking one eye like a fish. Like, and then he started to warm up. I don't know, maybe he thought I was just going to waffle on about his dad or anything like that, but I just wanted to talk to him. And after a while, he started to face the camera, and then what a cool guy. Like, he was just swearing and laughing, but what a great dude. But what we got talking about was the type of people that they cast on these shows. Like, there's a specific type of people. Like, I think there's a specific type of person that they cast on Band. There's a specific type of person that they cast on the Pacific, because there's lots more that you needed to be rather than just an actor. Do you know what I mean? And in this case, all of the Masters guys that Doug and I have interviewed, have got a similar personality. Can you put your finger on what that is?
I think we're all quite silly.
Other than the fact that you wear makeup and pretend for a living, what specific to Masters of the Air do you think that your guys' personalities sort of match up?
I think it's hard. It is hard to say. I'm interested to hear what Sawyer's going to say, but certainly when I watched Band of Brothers, I sort of and looked at the guys that they cast, I think physically we looked very different.
Yes,
and I think that I don't know. I don't know what the difference is as actors. My instinct wants me to say that like we were quite analytical people, you know? More than fully physically sort of instinctive. We were really like we all like really learned our history and our characters and our books, and we really studied them. And there was something about the fact that you're taking on quite a technical challenge, and guys had to literally learn how to like fly these things that sort of instilled a sense of like detail to, you know,
more cerebral.
A more cerebral sort of quality. I'm not suggesting that the guys on Band of Brothers and you guys didn't have that, because I think that's the job of an actor anyway. But I definitely noticed like a bit of a sort of homework club going on at this. You know, people would go and like revise in the hotel. Amongst
them, I forget which German field marshal this was. I want to say, well, it doesn't matter. I won't say it, because then I'll get chewed out by people who know the answer to this. But when he was putting together officers, he had a specific way of doing it. So if you were intelligent and hardworking, he would put you in one group. And if you were intelligent and kind of lazy or standoffish, he would put you in another group. And the guys that were intelligent and hardworking would get the admin jobs. And the guys that were intelligent and lazy would get the frontline position jobs. So they would be on the front line. And the reasoning he had behind it was that once the pressure was on, once the sort of terror of battle was on, their adrenaline would kick in and they would no longer be lazy. And I think, whereas the guys who were hardworking and intelligent, the pressure would get too much for them. And what I've noticed with the guys from Masters of the Air that I've had on is you're all very intelligent, very erudite, clever young men, but you all seem quite sort of not guarded, but slightly on the back foot, slightly, do you know what I mean? Like, you don't seem like the type of guy that would be the loudest dude in the pub, do you know what I mean? Like me and Doug would be.
Like we're guys, we're just jock douche idiots. That's pretty much all the band guys. Competitive jock douche idiots. Play rugby, rock climb, box, all Doug's type of stuff. Whereas you guys seem like you've got this sort of like, I don't know, A-level student vibe that you do the work and you're clever. But I think once put under pressure, your guys' adrenaline kick in, and I think that's what the show captured. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Once the adrenaline of being on set, once the adrenaline of having to know this stuff, once the camera's on, it sort of fired you guys up. Because interviewing you guys, you all seem very, very different, far less sort of energized. And do you know what I mean? You're clearly listening to what I'm saying and analyzing why I'm now upside down while I was outside before. And I think that's the thread that runs through. I think you guys have been cast so brilliantly. I think your type of character would have done well as a navigator on a B-17, Jonas.
Yeah. It's such an interesting and such a valid point. You're so right. I hadn't properly connected those dots because I'd sort of seen it as, I'm quite an anxious guy anyway, and I sort of assumed that, like, you know, a bunch of sort of like actors come along and we were all kind of, there was sort of an emotion. There's quite a high, sort of quite emotional people, but also quite sort of quite guarded and like quite. There's a lot of like wit, you know.
And that's, which is a sign of intelligence. And I think, you know, because all us guys, like as Matt said, we were really mainly cast for our like physicality a lot more. A bit of intelligence there as well. Obviously, like you say, every actor has to have it, every performer has to have it, but mainly for our physical being. But, you know, you guys also look the same kind of shape. You're all kind of quite narrow shouldered and quite, do you know what I mean? None of the guys that we've interviewed really had that kind of physical threat that some of the Band of Brothers guys had, for example. But you could see that you're all working things out, and all your responses are always very measured. And it's a great observation, Matt. It's a really good observation as to the casting type that they've done for this show, and it's absolutely perfect. I think. Yeah, it's absolutely perfect.
You know, we were in these B-17s, and we're walking from the front of the planes to the back of the planes. Well, we're scrambling through, like, in sort of, you know, these war scenes, these aerial battle scenes. I can't fit through the thing. Like, literally, I'm not a big guy, and fitting through the sort of like the V-shaped bomb bay is brutal. And like Callum couldn't fit through any of it. Well, he could. You do. Yeah. But like, it's not easy. So, you know, in many ways, I was like quite glad that I wasn't any bigger, because it was pretty tough. And you sort of wonder how they, obviously, a lot of this experience has been like, how did they do it?
You just push through. Yeah. I mean, so getting to that, what was your first day of shooting like? What was the sequence and how were you feeling on the day? And it must have been a very exciting moment.
Yeah. First day of shooting was episode 2. There's a scene at the end of the episode where I'm with Douglas and Hamilton, and he comes over and he sort of says, you see those girls over there? I'm gonna talk to them, and, you know, I bet you, and I'm like, I bet you a $5 or whatever that you won't talk to them. You'll crash and burn. And that was our first scene. So my first scene was like one of my most significant dialogue-y bits, which was quite intense and quite a lot. And also really interesting, because the thing that Carrie picked up was that my physicality wasn't quite right. And I think if you'd had some days to sort of film where you hadn't had, like, you know, camera focus on you, where you're part of the pack, part of the group, you sort of learn to sort of step in a quite similar sort of physicality, which is something that we did pick up on in boot camp. But when it was me on my own, he was like, Americans don't walk like that. Okay, they don't walk like that. You're too guarded. You're too guarded. You're too, like, he said, you look too British.
Wow.
And I was like, all right, cool. So we sort of like took me aside and we did like half an hour of kind of like almost like animal work, you know, like a drama school, like getting the shoulder moving, getting you sort of throwing your weight around, putting your hand, not being afraid of putting your hand in your pocket, even though that was kind of drilled out of us. In all the photos, they've all got their hands in their pockets.
Yeah, they do.
But it was a thing of like relaxedness, which was really interesting, like something to learn really quick on the job in front of everybody, in front of the cameras filming. It's like, you have done the work, but you actually need to go a little bit further than you think. It's like you make these decisions as actors. You're like, okay, my character's a navigator. He's probably he was a lawyer. He was studying at law school. So maybe he was quite sort of like prim and proper almost. But it's like, No, man, you get into a room full of 1940s American boys, they're going to swing their weight around a little bit. You know, they're going to have a flow to them and sort of ease to them. So that was something that was really interesting on the first date.
Great piece of direction.
It really is a great piece of direction. It's
very rarely get direction like that.
Yeah.
Really
mostly people already know what they're doing, unlike some chances over here.
No, but I wouldn't say that. But to say that he spotted it and to say, like kind of loosen up, throw your weight around a little bit, move the shoulders. That's a really good piece of direction. That's really, really, really clever. Yeah, really good.
Yeah, and then that releases everything. It releases the whole character. Your voice.
Because you relax your neck, you relax your throat. It becomes easier.
It's
and so much of that. Sorry.
Are you a cricket fan, Jonas?
No, don't watch cricket.
All right, so
no one's a cricket fan, Matthew. He asked that for everybody, cricket on Jonas, and he's struck out every time. There are no cricket fans.
This is relevant to Jonas and relevant to that piece of brilliant direction.
Yeah,
you must. The greatest player, pretty much of all time, is a guy called Shane Warne. Right, I'm going somewhere with this, and he was a leg spinner, so he spun the ball. Okay, yes, R.I.P. Shane Warne, love you. He was asked about a certain English bowler who was just not quite doing it, how he could improve his technique, and all he said was, "I've noticed he's gripping the ball too tight, and if you're gripping the ball too tight, your whole body's too tense. Be able to relax to be able to do it." Anymore.
Yeah.
All right. I just had to put that in. Okay. I know.
So relax the fingers.
Relax. That's the point.
Yeah. But
it is one of the hardest things to do on the first day.
Under pressure is relax.
Yeah.
It's the biggest thing you're probably ever going to be involved in. You know, like I don't think I'll ever, and I don't think this is me playing myself down. I think that is probably the biggest set I will ever work on.
It was for us, I think, as well. Yeah.
So of course you're going to be tense. So it's really helpful as a director to be just chill, man.
Yeah. Chill out. And what was it like when you got into? I mean, we've heard a lot about it. You know, this fantastic surround thing around the aircraft where you have all the planes and stuff coming in. I forget what they call it. That piece of technology. You know, what do they call it?
Volume.
And it's just, what was that like? Getting into that set for the first time and having that experience.
Well, look, you don't have to do any acting, which is really handy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just there.
Yeah, because you can barely walk, let's be honest.
Well, to be honest, I need all the help I can get at this point. But, you're in this thing and it's shaking you around and stuff. And, you look out your window in your little navigator's table, there's a fucking, Messerschmitt flying at you. It's like, you don't need to do anything. Everything's there for you. Everything's there to play with. And apart from the guns, which are amazing, but didn't have any. This is a bit of an industry sort of. Maybe this isn't. Oh, it's fine. They didn't have any kickback.
Right.
So every bit of kickback you see on the telly is us going, whoa!
Right.
But everything else is sort of exactly there and happening. So, as you say, there's nothing you really need to sort of to do. And I guess what it really gives you is sort of a respect for looking out the window and imagining that this is really happening in front of you. That's really important as an actor. You look out and you think, I'm freaked out by this and this is CGI. Imagine if it's flippant. Imagine if it was real. Yeah, it's sort of almost unimaginable, That's as close as you can get, and it's even that is totally unimaginable.
Yeah.
Was there some takes where the director was like, "Cut, boys, you're just watching the volume, with wide eyes. You need to actually react to actual characters, not just actors." Wow.
It's sort of like that, but also a bit further. It's like the plane moves a bit, and all the actors well, we better sell this one. You're like, whoa! And guys,
early Star Trek stuff.
We're trying to do a job here. You're stable. Give us a bit less.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fun watching a bunch of actors in an environment they're not familiar with, basically trying to impress.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to everyone needs their sort of their instincts quelled a touch, just because you sort of feel like you're, the way that when the show works, it's when it feels real, not when it feels like people are trying to be heroes. They're just being, reacting to the situation.
Yeah, you're trying to survive. Yeah. Yeah. Shall we get into the character then? Shall we get into Frank Murphy? So you said you read the book a couple times. What was your biggest takeaway from it, other than the fact that the guy did incredible things and had many distinguished medals because of that, and was shot out of his own plane and survived a terrible march and survived the prisoner of war camp. I mean, I'm just listing a litany of incredible things.
Yeah. His humility, I found incredible.
Right. Wow.
He writes beautifully, and his reflections on what was objectively hell are sort of dealt with such humor and such humanity that I was very moved to be considered to be playing this guy. You know, the bit where he describes shooting, he says there was only a couple of times where he actually hit. He knew for sure that he'd hit aircraft, and you know, he describes watching the plane sort of come down and watching the plane go down in a bunch of flames, and he sort of was like, I look back on it now and I hope that I understand that, like me, he had a job to do, and I hope he survived, and I hope he had kids, and I hope he had grandkids, and I hope he had the life that I had. You know, his humility amongst humanity, amongst the whole sort of carnage of the thing was really beautiful, I think, and it gave it what that led me to sort of think on a global scale was the idea that these are just young men. These are just such incredibly young men thrown into something that at the end of the day is out of their control, and they're just mucking through and trying to do the best of it because it's what they feel they ought to do. What he says that we signed up because we felt we ought to. Right.
It's that's quite a common response at the time, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I was very moved by his personality, which just shines through in the book. If you've read it, it's amazing. It's amazing.
No, I haven't read it. I mean, I've got so much reading to do on this subject matter now. I'm sort of like in my little bunkie on a night trying to get. Did he talk about the psychology of the bombing raids? Not just the survival of that, but actually what they were actually doing.
Yeah, a little bit. Oh, do you mean about the sort of ethics of bombing raids?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's something that he delves into around the Munster raid, which actually the show delves into too. You know, there's the scene in episode 5 where Murphy kind of says, doesn't feel right. It's a Sunday. We're going to be bombing this place. It's right next to the cathedral. He does go into sort of the ethics of what it is to sort of drop a bomb near a lot of, you know, innocent civilians, and how that was a very confusing moment amongst all of the men in the briefing that morning about how there's. Okay, sorry, I'm a bit fumbling my words here, but
no, crack on.
He goes into the fact that there's quite a lot of different testimonies about that moment. There's people who write in their sort of memories that there was cheering and there was whooping in the crowd as we discovered that we were going to be bombing, like, you know, a target of the
civilian town.
Yeah, exactly. There's other testimonies that say that there was sort of shocked, sort of frightened faces and cries out of "this is ridiculous." And in reality, I think Frank he's quite a level-headed guy, and I think he gets it right, which is that there was sort of no reaction at all. You know, it was sort of the case of a sense of not being able to sort of question, you know, the fact that this was happening. Does he go into the ethics of it? Yeah, he certainly does, and he does that in the way that I described when he's shooting down the Messerschmitt pilot. But the ethics of it in total, I don't think he really delves into it as much ethically. I think what he just sort of really establishes is the fact that this is an incredibly crucial part of the bombing raids, and in some ways could be much more crucial than, you know, firebombing Dresden. It's like, let's get rid of the ball bearing factories. That then in turn gets rid of this. That then that gets that gets rid of that.
Yeah.
You know, sorry,
I think
blurbing here.
No, because I think I've led you down a rabbit hole here unintentionally, because the wider ethics of the raids that's not kind of what I was talking about, because I'm assuming as a 22-year-old man that it's hard to get a perspective on that anyway, and you're just trying to survive. And it's every single one of those raids is a suicide mission anyway. So it's like, okay, I'm going to do this, but there's a very good chance I'm not coming back. So, I mean, it's hell or high water either way. I just wonder whether he personally sort of said anything that was just like, this is, I don't know. I guess it is the wider ethics then, you know. I just wondered how he sort of felt about it, or whether there was no reaction in him. And he was like, I'm put in this situation in which every time I go up there is a suicide mission. But when the bomb's gone, you know, am I...
It's really good. Oh, I guess you've got editing tools. You can take this all out.
Yeah, we do edit. Yeah, I'll have to edit my choppiness. So, yeah.
Oh God, my knowledge of the book is so much worse than it was. Basically, he talks about this thing that he calls sitting duck syndrome. It's the thing that he says never leaves him. Sitting duck syndrome is the idea that you're up in the plane and you're just waiting, and you're waiting for that thing to happen, and you feel totally defenseless, even though you've got a lot of defenses, you've got the guns, you've got the pilots, but really you are a sitting duck waiting to be shot down. And that feeling never goes away. That feeling doesn't go away, you know, on missions that get scrubbed. That feeling stays when you're sitting on the tarmac waiting for the fog to lift. In fact, I think he sort of goes in to say that that's kind of the worst bit of all, is the waiting. That feeling of anticipation.
And that probably stayed anticipation. That probably stayed with him way after the war as well. You know, you just that anticipated feeling, that must be a hard thing to actually get over and work through. And I think the book probably writing the book perhaps was some catharsis. Was that the reason for, did he ever say what was the reason for him actually starting to write? And
I just think he felt like he owed it to the guys. I think what's really okay. There's a really beautiful interview with him for the Atlanta History Project, I think. Where at the very end, the sort of interviewer wraps up, and then Frank sort of is moved to say one more thing. He says, "I've got one more thing to say," and he says, "The reason why we need to remember these guys is for the right for us all to forget." Guys died so that we could forget what happened. It's tyranny and sort of dictatorships that force us to remember the past. What the guys in World War II died for and sacrificed their lives for was our right to forget the past, and our right to move on, and our right to live our lives today without thinking about that. And that right to forget is why we should remember them.
Yeah,
I think that's part of what plays into the writing.
Yeah, that's very powerful. I mean, obviously it's happening again just a few hundred kilometers from where I live, you know. So it's we have a dictator sort of invading Ukraine. So yeah, it's all happening again. And you know, he's bombing civilian cities and towns and all this kind of stuff. And
there's a great book written about time in Vietnam called Chicken Hawk. And it's about the air cav. So they're flying in helicopters, and he describes that sitting duck syndrome incredibly well in that. How as they started to brush the tops of the trees and coming into land, they just know that they're kind of open up on them at any time. And the absolute terror and the unbelievable desire to just get on the ground. You know what I mean? Just get out of this sitting duck aircraft as it comes flying in, and how like people were just behaving in the most sort of like peculiar way. Do you know what I mean? To just like any piece of metal on the floor that they thought would be double riveted or whatever, they were just crawled up in a ball and underneath it. Do you know what I mean? It's particularly terrifying. But what you told me about that scene really reminded me of
that. There's a bit where he sort of says, you know, some guys couldn't hack it. They couldn't get back up. He says no one sort of judged them because everyone felt the same. But the reason that he went up again and again is the reason why everyone else did. It's because everyone did.
Yeah.
And you owe your guys to go back again. You did it before then.
So yeah, I mean, we spoke about this. Many other actors, like they would get a file on the guy they were playing. So you obviously did you get a lot of information before you started filming, or was a lot of this you found subsequent?
Yeah, not really. I was listening to your podcast with Louis, and I heard you talk about the file. I definitely did get a file, but I couldn't really remember it because the first thing I did was buy his book, which is quite a file. If not, I mean, what a gift for an actor to have an autobiography.
Yeah,
you know? It's outrageous. So that was my first port of call. Really, I found the book and I found his interviews online, and I just sort of smashed through them. Because I just, you're playing a real guy here.
Exactly. Yeah.
You have to know. I mean, presumably you guys felt similarly with.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where the real sense that, I mean, that's why we're all here. That's why we're all talking about it, because the effect it all had on us. When you're playing someone who was alive and they were doing what we were portraying, they did. It just sits in you and it never leaves. I've still got Altamore's dog tags. I still I still wear them every now and again and remember him when it comes around the D-Day and stuff. And, yeah, and I think we all feel that. And, this is something that obviously if you listen to a few more interviews, as your life goes on, this will become more and more important to you because it's become more important to us, isn't it, Matthew?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you'll learn more and people will reach out to you.
Yeah.
Relatives will reach out to you, or friends of relatives will reach out to you, and they'll tell you something about your guy or about a friend of your guy, whoever it is. And suddenly click in your head, you think, like it'll make sense of a whole bunch of other stuff. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And you just keeps growing. And then
have you had any contact with relatives? Does he have many surviving relatives? He obviously has a few, right?
Loads. They've been amazing. They've been extraordinary. I got contacted by his granddaughter, Chloe Malas, a few months into the process, so around October. She sort of followed me on Instagram and then didn't say anything. And I thought, better send a message. So I sent a message.
Better say hi.
Better say hi. And this is weird. There's a Brit. He's playing your granddad. What do you think about that? It's an honor. Blah blah blah. I read the book. He means so much to me now. And that started this relationship. And they've all been amazing. That a week after that, I had a Zoom with his widow and his daughter, which was amazing. Wow. Yeah, big time.
What was that like?
Daunting, but they were the loveliest, most generous people. There was a moment which I really enjoyed where his widow said, Anne said, she said, she looked at me and she said, when I met Frank after the war, he was so skinny, but I saw photos of him at the time and boy, he was beefy. And I sort of looked at myself there and thought, well, we're going for later. There is simply nothing I can do about this at the moment. But
I think you just got body shamed, Jonas, to be honest.
Yeah, which is very fair. Very fair. I wouldn't lie if I'd be lying if I said it wasn't something I had thought about, which was that we physically were a little bit different. But they're just incredibly caring people, and they really care about Frank's legacy.
Right.
And I wanted to show them that I really cared about Frank's legacy too. And then I met Chloe and Elizabeth, his daughter, in Los Angeles at the premiere. Wow. And that was a whirlwind. She's amazing. Chloe, all three of them are extraordinary. And Chloe's a journalist for NBC, and she sort of like champions me, and she's like, this is going to be really big for you, and we're going to try and help you out any way we can, because we just feel so much.
Isn't that beautiful?
Part of our family now. It's so beautiful. Like I didn't. It's so much more than I could have ever expected.
Yeah.
It's
wow. Well, I'll tell you the story and see if you can get through this. All right. So we were doing these Zoom podcasts. We were doing them with the Band of Brothers guys, and we'd have relatives and writers on, and we had Rick Warden on, who plays Harry Welsh. And zooming in from a horse ranch in Georgia or something like that was Harry Welsh's granddaughter. And they had an interaction. It was very lovely. I think they'd spoken before. I'm not sure. They had this interaction. And then right as she was going, she was leading her horse back into the stable, whatever she was doing. She said, "Oh, Rick, I just got to say, you've got my I can't get through this. You've got my grandfather's smile." I did exactly the same thing then as I'm doing now. I don't know why. I found that really moving.
Yeah,
it's incredibly moving.
Yeah, and it's a power. So obviously you feel a sense of, obviously a great sense of honor and responsibility as well, because obviously now you're part of that. You're part of that family. You're part of that history that's going to be there long after we're gone. It's up there on the big screen, and Yeah, what a wonderful thing. And like as I said, like with me and Matthew and all the other guys, you know, the older we've got, the more important it has become to us. I mean, are you still in contact with the guys that are on your plane? You got that kind of Band of Brothers feel with the other guys? You hook up and stay in touch and all this kind of stuff?
There's a good bunch of guys. Obviously, some of them have gone stratospheric.
Yeah,
but,
of course.
Yeah. And the fact that so many people have sort of moved out of London makes it a bit tricky. But there's a really good sort of core WhatsApp group. This is so 2024. That stays pretty active. And we try to meet up every sort of few months and have a good drink and a good sort of like reminisce.
Yeah.
Because we all just know, we're just aware of the sort of privilege of it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone feels so incredible being a part of it.
It's good. It's amazing. Are you back with us, Matthew?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sorry, it's been a choppy nightmare. I do apologise.
Yeah, we better wrap this up. I think pretty soon because it seems like your internet's getting worse.
All right, hang on 1 second. We'll wrap it up. I apologise. So I guess I have to just ask the final question, Jonas, before I wrap it up. We subheaded this podcast "The Nearly Men." And is there something you could nearly have been in life, or a part you nearly got? I'm assuming you could nearly have been in the Philharmonic Orchestra as a clarinet player.
Mm.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. With my Dossers grade 8. When I was a kid, my dad used to take me go-karting every Saturday to a go-kart track in Streatham, which was in a bus shelter. And the fumes were so bad that the people who worked there are now suing them, I believe, because of sort of long-term. Anyway, really grotty, wonderful place, my favorite place in the world. And for about 4.5 years, all I wanted to be forever was a racing driver.
Really?
Saturday, I got taken to Streatham go-kart track and pound around with some other sort of like 10-year-olds. So There you go. Nearly a racing driver.
That's a good one. I like that one.
Think, isn't that the second one of those we've had from the Masters?
It is.
Who else was it?
Who else? Another one.
Who's that?
I can't remember.
We got to go.
I can't remember either, but we did have another one. There was a go-kartist as well, and was really good at it.
Was it Kai? Was it Kai Alexander? I can't remember.
Bet it was Kai Alexander. That check so much. I must text him. We must go.
If it wasn't him, I forget who it was. There is a question in the chat. Doug, can you ask that in case I chop out again? It's from Anne.
Yeah, I can't see it. Oh, here we go.
They can just put it in the chat.
Who's this from?
Anna. It comes on our tours.
Okay, I'd love to know if you read Murphy's biography prior to filming, and if so, if that sort of influenced his portrayal of Murphy. I'm not, if not in certain scenes, then at least in mannerisms or the overall way he perceived his character. And that's from Anna Tucker. Yeah, I mean, we covered that a little bit, but you did read the book before your first day of filming, right?
Yeah, a lot of times.
And how much did that influence? I mean, what?
Massively. I can't even begin to tell you how much. Like you, as an actor, you write biographies for your characters. Well, I sort of do, and it had been written for me. Like, I think little details were really useful. So, for instance, when I watched his interviews, I heard that he said things like temperature instead of temperature. He would say things like, "I had no idea," rather than "I had no idea." So there were these like little like vocal tics that you could sort of really weave in. And then, like, just historically, like people would come to me, be like, "Jonas, by the way, so on the 13th of sort of June 1943, which actual bombing raid were we on? And what was it? This was it this?" And I'm like, "Don't worry, I can tell you. I've got it all in Frank's book. I've got everything listed. I've got how he felt. I've got who was in the forts."
Wow.
Yeah.
So it was a constant thing that you basically had with you on in your trailer every day that you would refer to, depending on which raid you were representing, and read how he felt and what was going on.
Yeah, everything. I'd send it to the boys. He probably got really sick of it, but like, I sent them the reactions to the Munster briefing. I sent them the reactions to the first day in POW camp.
Wow,
like
amazing!
It's ridiculous. What a response.
Brilliant.
Wow. Well, listen, Jonas, we've had you on for almost an hour.
Yeah. We'd love to get you back on, Jonas. So please stay in touch.
Please, anytime. What a pleasure it's been. Thanks so much for having me, guys. Honestly.
Yeah, we really appreciate you coming on. It's been absolutely fascinating. I feel you've got a lot more to talk about as well, you know, with regarding your character. But as I can see, Matt's frozen again. But I'll wait for him to come back on so he could say goodbye to you as well.
I'm here, Jonas. Thank you so much. Can you hear me? I feel like I keep falling down a well. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. And
in classic style, he hasn't finished off. But yeah, yeah, thank you so much. Oh, he is back. Right, go on. Yeah. What was you going to say, Matthew? Quick.
I'm saying thank you very much. Thank you so much for coming on. I really apologize. It's been so choppy, Jonas.
Thank you so much for having me. Honestly, it's such a pleasure to talk about it again. You know. Anytime, please.
Yeah, we'll definitely have you back on, Jonas, because there's a lot more to discuss here. Obviously with Murphy's book as being such a great reference point, I think there's a lot more things we can get into. So yeah, love to have you back, and yeah, really wish you well. Whatever if you're working now or in between jobs, we will all the guys we all want to do really successful and get some work and just have a great life and a great experience. So I hope you got something good in the pipeline. If not, just keep the faith. It's going to come. Thanks, and we'll see you soon. Okay, mate.
Soon. Lots of love to you.
Cheers, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Cheers, babe. Bye.
Cheers, man.
Bye-bye.
Wow.
What
a lovely guy.
I apologize for any choppiness. I will sort that out. I don't know why. It's been brilliant beforehand.
Yeah, no, it was you were in and out quite a lot, but what a lovely guy. Again, we must have him back on because I just think he's, you know, with such surviving family and obviously with the book as well, like he's really involved in the family and really involved in the story. And yeah, I got a sense we could talk for hours with him.
Yeah. I'll switch out the Wi-Fi and we can get him back on for a short little pod.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe even a watch along as well or something like that.
Yeah,
with his knowledge of what was going on and the way he referenced the sequences that they were shooting with what he was reading in the book as well. That takes a lot to do that when you're preparing as an actor, to keep referring to, you got a lot on your mind, for him to have the capacity to do that. But that's like we said at the beginning of the show, like these actors, they are more cerebral than we were. They are more technical. They are more intelligent in that way, I feel. That it seems like they can take a lot while we were all a little bit more simple, but a little bit more physical, but more physically.
Tell me where to run.
Yeah, I don't think many of them have calluses on their hands, like we all had.
Right, no, exactly. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
workouts.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right, fellas. Well, listen, thanks very much for listening. Hopefully when you get this, it won't be as choppy as it was. I do apologize. I'm sure Leighton will do a great job editing it, and we will speak next week. Cheers, guys.
Speak to you soon. Cheers.
Cheers.